Your thoughts just appear, not by choice, not by command. They emerge like waves crashing against the shores of your mind, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent, but always there. You don't summon them, they happen, and somehow they feel like you. But here's the uncomfortable question. Where do they actually come from? You might say, the brain, and yes, that's technically true. But that's like saying music comes from a speaker. It doesn't answer the real mystery. What part of the brain turns electricity into experience? Where, inside this biological machine, does your consciousness live? This isn't just some late-night philosophical spiral. It's a real scientific puzzle, one that the greatest minds in history still haven't cracked. Plato thought it came from a world of pure ideas. Augustine believed it was a divine spark. Descartes split it into two substances, body and mind. And still, centuries later, we're stuck in the same question. How does matter become awareness? We can measure brainwaves, we can locate neural circuits, but we still can't explain why there's a you experiencing any of it. In this video, we'll explore that mystery, not just where consciousness comes from, but why it might be the greatest unknown in all of science. And if that idea feels like something you want more of, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps the algorithm know you're one of us. Consciousness. It's not just a thing we have. It's the very lens through which we experience everything else. You're watching this video. You're hearing these words, but you're also aware that you're watching and hearing. That second layer, the one that knows you know, that's what we call consciousness. And yet, for something so central to our existence, we know almost nothing about it. Where is it? What is it made of? Can it exist without a brain? Or is it just an illusion, a side effect of something else? This question isn't just about philosophy anymore. It's at the heart of neuroscience, physics, artificial intelligence, and even ethics. Because if we don't understand what consciousness is, how can we ever be sure who or what is conscious? Is it just humans? What about animals, machines, the entire universe? Some say it's all just neurons and chemistry, a complex dance of matter and energy. Others believe consciousness is something deeper, a fundamental aspect of reality, like time or gravity, something that doesn't just emerge but exists on its own. So today, we're going to explore this enigma from every angle we can reach. We'll dive into history, science, philosophy, and even some theories that sound almost magical. And here's what I'd love to know. Do you think consciousness is something science will eventually explain? Or is it one of those things we'll never truly grasp? Let's find out together. Let's begin with the first paradox. You feel like a whole person, a single self moving through the world. But when we look inside your head, there's no you to be found. No center, no glowing orb, no control room with a tiny pilot, just neurons, electrochemical signals, billions of them, buzzing, firing, reacting. And somehow, this chaotic web produces thoughts, decisions, emotions, awareness. But how? Let's rewind a bit. For most of human history, the body and the mind were considered two separate things. The idea, known as dualism, dates back at least to Plato. He imagined the body as a temporary shell, and the soul, the real you, as something eternal, independent of the physical world. This idea shaped religion, philosophy, and culture for centuries. Santo Agostinho, deeply influenced by Plato, argued that the soul comes from a higher plane, and the body is merely its vehicle, a divine spark inside a bag of meat. But dualism hit a wall when it had to answer a very basic question. If the mind and body are truly separate, how do they interact? Let's say someone kicks you in the leg. You feel pain, anger, maybe you shout. But how did the physical event, a boot hitting your muscle, trigger an emotion, a thought, a memory? This was called the problem of interaction. How can something non-physical, like the mind, affect something physical, like the body, and vice versa? The French philosopher René Descartes tried to answer this by pointing to the pineal gland, a tiny structure in the center of the brain. He believed it was the seat of the soul, the bridge between the two realms. Today, we know the pineal gland regulates sleep cycles, not thoughts, not consciousness. And we have yet to find any bridge at all. But Descartes left us with a legacy, the idea that the mind is something else, something mysterious, maybe even untouchable. Fast forward to modern science, and a new perspective emerges: monism, the belief that mind and body are not separate things, but two aspects of the same reality. In other words, your thoughts are not produced by some ghostly soul floating above your neurons. They are your neurons, the result of patterns, signals, loops of activity in the brain. This is where things get strange. In the late 19th century, scientists like Richard Peyton discovered tiny electrical changes in the brains of animals. They observed how different states, sleep, alertness, movement, correlated with specific brain patterns. Then came the invention of the EEG, the electroencephalogram. For the first time, we could listen to the brain without cutting it open. And what we found was astonishing. The brain is constantly active, even when you're asleep, even when you're unconscious. Different types of brain waves correspond to different mental states. Fast, chaotic waves when you're awake and alert. Slow, deep waves during sleep. Sudden bursts during intense emotions or seizures. And yet, here's the problem. We can see the activity. We can track the patterns. But none of it explains why those signals feel like anything at all. Imagine we scan your brain while you listen to your favorite song. We can point to the regions that light up. We can say, that's your auditory cortex. That's your memory center. That's your emotional response. But that still doesn't explain why that particular combination of signals makes you feel nostalgia, or joy, or heartbreak. This is what philosopher David Chalmers calls the hard problem of consciousness. Not how the brain works, but why it creates subjective experience. Why aren't we just machines reacting to inputs with outputs? Why is there a someone inside feeling things? And this leads us to an even more perplexing question. What is it that we're actually experiencing? Let's say you touch something hot. Your hand jerks away instantly. This is called a reflex arc. The signal doesn't even reach your brain before your body reacts. Pure automation. But then you realize your hand hurts. You say, ow. You feel annoyed, angry, confused. That second layer, that sense of I am hurt, is not part of the reflex. It's the consciousness interpreting the event. But here's the twist. Your hand doesn't know it's hurt. It just responds. So where does the knowing happen? We can rule out the hand. But what about the rest of your body? Is consciousness distributed? Is it a field, a network, a singular point? Many theories try to answer this, and we'll dive into them soon. But for now, let's focus on a smaller piece of the puzzle: qualia. Qualia are the raw, subjective ingredients of experience. The redness of a rose, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the chill you feel when a memory hits you. Science can measure light frequencies, skin temperature, neural patterns, but it can't access the feeling. The redness of red, the bitterness of betrayal. Qualia are completely private. There's no way to prove that your red is the same as mine. No way to know if my sadness feels like your sadness. All we have are words, shaky translations of something deeply internal. And that's why consciousness remains so elusive. It's not just a phenomenon. It's a perspective, a reality only the observer can see. But what if that's the point? What if consciousness isn't meant to be dissected but lived? And yet, we still want to understand. Because deep down, we suspect that understanding it could unlock everything else: free will, memory, emotion, selfhood, even the nature of reality itself. So let's keep going. Let's explore what happens when consciousness breaks in greens, in coma, in split brain patients, and see what that reveals about who we really are. Let's start with something deeply unsettling. There are people who've lived entire lives with half a brain, and yet they speak, walk, laugh, even solve math problems. Their sense of self remains intact. Then, there are split brain patients, individuals who've had the connection between the two hemispheres of their brains severed to treat epilepsy. Here's what's weird. In some experiments, one half of the brain sees something, like a word or image, but the person can't say what it is. Yet, with their hand, they can point to it. It's as if one half of their mind knows, but the other doesn't, as if they're not one person anymore, but two. This challenges our entire notion of the unified self. If cutting a tiny bundle of nerves can split consciousness in two, what does that say about you? Are you already a collection of smaller selves, held together by habit? Is your I just a story told by the brain to itself? The more we study consciousness, the more fragmented it seems. We've seen it vanish in coma, dissolve in psychedelic states, and fracture in dissociative identity disorder. We've seen it flicker during anesthesia. Patients who were unconscious suddenly recall sounds, voices, even pain. Clearly, something survives the shutdown, but we still don't know what. And so, new theories emerge. Some scientists now suggest that consciousness might be like a symphony. Not one note, but many, played together in precise patterns. Others propose it's a loop, a feedback system where the brain constantly observes and updates itself, creating a sense of awareness. And then, there's something far more radical: panpsychism. This idea suggests that consciousness isn't something that arises from complexity, but something that exists in everything. That every particle, every atom, every field in the universe contains a tiny flicker of awareness. Not enough to think, not enough to suffer, but just enough to be. Imagine consciousness like gravity, everywhere, weak but fundamental. As matter becomes more organized, as brains evolve, that awareness amplifies. Until one day, it becomes you. At first, this sounds like science fiction. But thinkers like David Chalmers take it seriously. Because for all our science, we still can't explain why some things are conscious and others are not. If your brain is made of atoms and a rock is made of atoms, what's the difference? Complexity? Organization? Or is there a deeper property we're missing? Some propose consciousness might be a new force of nature, something beyond matter and energy. A field that arises only under certain conditions, like magnetism or radiation. Others think it's all electromagnetic, that the brain's unique electrical patterns produce a field, and that field is the experience. Still, others go further, that consciousness is not produced by the brain at all, but that the brain is a receiver, like a radio picking up signals from a deeper dimension. If that's true, what else might be conscious? Animals, certainly. They feel, they fear, they love. But what about trees? They communicate, remember, even warn each other through chemical signals. Is that just biology or something more? And machines? As AI advances, it gets better at mimicking human behavior. It can write, talk, even pretend to feel. But is it conscious? If we build a machine that acts conscious, is that enough? Or does it need something else, something invisible? Right now, we don't have the tools to tell, but there's one clue we do have: ourselves. Every thought, every feeling, every dream you've ever had, It's all filtered through your consciousness. It's the one thing you can't escape, because it's the thing doing the escaping. You can doubt your memories, you can question reality, but you can't deny that something is having the experience. And maybe that's all consciousness is. Not an object, not a location, but a point of view, a first-person lens through which the universe sees itself. But even that is a mystery, because who is it exactly that's doing the seeing? You say, I am, but what is that I? Is it your name, your body, your thoughts? Let's test it. Close your eyes. Now, try to locate the part of you that's watching all of this. Not the thoughts, not the emotions, but the watcher behind them. Where is it? Can you find it, or is it just awareness itself? Some spiritual traditions call this the true self. Others call it illusion. Science hasn't settled the debate. But maybe, just maybe, we've been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe the point isn't to find where consciousness lives, but to realize that it's not in us at all, that we are in it, like waves in an ocean we don't yet understand. And the more we look, the deeper it gets. So the question remains, will we ever truly explain consciousness? Or are we like mirrors trying to reflect themselves, forever chasing a mystery that only exists because we're the ones chasing it? Maybe we're asking the wrong questions. Maybe consciousness isn't a thing to be located or measured, but a phenomenon we've barely started to notice. And that opens the door to a much stranger idea. What if the brain isn't the source of consciousness at all, but just the interface, a translator, a filter, something that tunes into awareness the way a radio picks up sound? If that's true, then everything we think we know about life, death, identity needs to be rewritten. Could consciousness survive the brain? Could it exist without form? Or could we one day create it on purpose? We'll explore that in another video. And trust me, it goes even deeper than this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.